Well, I think the love of family is probably number one. I think that my family comes first. Currently, there are between in-laws and outlaws and the three kids, there are 25 units of us all together when you talk about grandkids and great-grandkids. And so I think that they're very important in my life and have been. Well, I think it's nice to be able to help people and give to your kids love and not necessarily financial backing, but it doesn't hurt to be able to help them. But I think giving to the community is important. After all, this is where I made my living. And I always thought in my lifetime it would be nice to be able to give back to the community. I try to do some of that while I'm still alive. And so you can see the fruit. Now it's taken off, and it's something really be very, very proud of, to see what's happened to Indiana Tech, and to be able to give to that has been, it just supporting it, and they appreciate it, and I thought it was a nice experience. What they are able to do for the average person, which I don't think a lot of people might not know, but if you've been lucky enough to make a little money in stocks, you can give them appreciated stock, which they can deliver cash to whoever you might want to go to, and they will administer that and to other foundations or to other schools or whatever, your churches, what have you. They're able to distribute that cash instead of you trying to dribble out a share or 2 shares of stock to somebody going on during your lifetime. So currently, while I'm alive, I'm able to use the Fort Wayne Foundation actively. I can give money, and we have it in an account. And from that, they can distribute that to the charities of my choice during my lifetime. When I die, I have made provisions for part of my IRA has some funds in it, and I intend to leave a fourth of that to the foundation. And then the foundation has been kind enough to let my 3 children direct it and as to what we want to give to. And I don't know how long it'll last. I don't know how long it'll go on, and maybe they'll do something too. So I don't know what it, but at least it's nice. I feel honored that I can have that in our name, Dick and Jeannie Phillips, and give back to the community, which I've said before. I believe that this is where I made my living, and I think I should give back to it. I guess that's a really good question. I really haven't thought about that. I just hope they remember as a decent guy, and as my son-in-laws sometimes say, they all had a nickname for him. It was Bompo, and Bompo was pretty tough on them when they were dating your daughter. You wanted to make sure that they were okay. And my son-in-law, the oldest one, who's married to Susan, said to me many times, I was pretty tough on my kids. I learned that from somebody that demonstrated that to me. So I guess that's I was adopted by my parents, and they lived in Hicksville, Ohio. And we lived there for a little while. Then they moved to Fort Wayne, brought me over here, and we grew up. We lived on the south side of town at the time. And a few years later, they moved out north, the north part of Fort Wayne, and that's where we spent most of my time. And I went to Forest Park Grade School, and then I went to Northside High, and I graduated in 1943. Of interest, when I was in high school, I was very active in the Boy Scouts, and I thought that was kind of an important thing. And I became an Eagle Scout and an Order of the Arrow, which is what scouting knows most about. And I had a son who mimicked that, and he became an Eagle Scout. So there are two of us in the family now. So that's been kind of nice, and it's been 60 years since I was in scouting. At least, maybe more, a little more than that, but we won't talk about that. So anyway, then I started at Indiana Tech before I went in the service, and I entered the service in now let's see, I get these years all mixed up. I went in 1943 and came out in 1945 and went back to school. And I graduated from Indiana Tech in 1948, and then I went to Chicago. Graduated with a BSME, and I promised myself I'd stay a year and a half in Chicago working for Babcock and Wilcox, which is a steam power plant company. And I spent that year and a half. And I probably kind of grew up a little bit in the big city, which was different living in Chicago than in Fort Wayne. 1 year and 6 months, I resigned and came home. Did not have a job, and my mother worked in the home office of the Lincoln National Life, and she said, "Why don't you talk to our old neighbor? She's in the insurance business." And so Zura Ziegler Brown Dome lived across the street, and she introduced me to Berlin Harold, who was a general agent for Lincoln Life. And the office is outside of the home office. It was never in the home office. And in my career, we were in 4 or 5 offices. And 1 year I was lucky enough to become Agent of the Year, and led sales for Lincoln Life. And the Lincoln Life was a very nice company to work for. I'm still getting a pension today and deferred comp, and that always helps. But with what's going on in the world today, it's never enough, I guess. So, and then I got married in 1953. And I married a widow who had 2 children. Her husband was killed in the World War II, and he got shot down over Japan. They never found his body, and so they never had a chance to say goodbye. Anyway, Jeannie was a local girl, and she had 2 girls, Debbie and Susan, and we adopted them, and they took our name, and that was the beginning. And then in 55, I was lucky enough to acquire a son by birth, and he's been in business with me for 30 years or so now, and that's been an interesting story in itself. The way the company has grown after I got out, he took over and ran with it and became a real financial planner. And I don't know how much money they manage, but somewhere over $500 million now. And so he's been very successful, and we have 15 people, I think, that are employees. And anyway, my wife died after a few days after our 50th anniversary, which we had celebrated, and she up and died. And so I've been a widower, and I live by myself and come to the office now and then. Along the way, I've been on some boards, if that is that of interest. I don't know whether I can remember all of them. That's not. I was on the board at Indiana Tech, which was okay, and then I was on a bank board, the old Anthony Wayne Bank, and then we merged, and I became a board member of the Indiana Bank, which was run by Dick Dormer. And then some charity boards I participated in. Board at the Civic Theater. I was president of the Civic Theater Board for a year or so. And then I helped start a corporation called AllMet, which is a manufacturing company of steel. And they are doing very well. And the owner, two of the owners have died, and after putting that together, and it's still successful. And the current son of the original owner has two children that he think may be interested in being on the company. So anyway, that kind of brings up to date. Well, my parents, I think, taught me certain values. Certainly, the church was part of that, and I thought that was kind of important to have a church relationship. And my dad wanted me to be an engineer. He was an engineer, a mechanical engineer, with hands-on at an ice cream company. So and he thought if I got a degree, I would be better off having a mechanical engineering degree and be able to do that. And I already have said that I participated in a learning process of being on a drafting board for a year and a half, which I didn't like. And I always wanted to be with people. I like being people and talking with them. So my mother, as I said, introduced me, and I got started in the Lincoln Life. And in those days, the only way you got paid was being paid by commission. And what you earned is what you lived on. And if it wasn't successful, you might be up short. So it was kind of nice being single at the time when I started, so I didn't have a family to support. Well, I suppose scouting was kind of a factor in my life that I think it established some good ideas, and you got to be with people, and I think that was probably an early experience in my life. I suspect there's been some people there have been some people. The $1 Million Round Table was kind of an important thing, where if you go to those meetings, you found out that you were just a small producer compared to some of the big guys. But I think that helped you learn that there's more upstairs, and there's always greater success, people that are more successful than you. And but it was nice palling around with those people and getting to know them. Well, I think the love of family is probably number one. I think that my family comes first. Currently, there are, between in-laws and outlaws and the 3 kids, there are 25 units of us all together when you talk about grandkids and great-grandkids. And so I think that they're very important in my life and have been. Well, I think it's nice to be able to help people and give to your kids love and not necessarily financial backing, but that doesn't hurt to be able to help them. But I think giving to the community is important. After all, this is where I made my living. And I always thought in my lifetime it would be nice to be able to give back to the community. I try to do some of that while I'm still alive. And so you can see the fruit. I think Indiana Tech has a marvelous experience. If I could reminisce that when I first started at Indiana Tech back in the 40s, it was called a hole in the wall, and that's all that there was. It was just a little building downtown, and that's where the school was. And so ultimately they bought the campus out at Concordia, and now it's taken off, and it's something really be very, very proud of, to see what's happened to Indiana Tech, and to be able to give to that has been, it just supporting it, and they appreciate it, and I thought it was a nice experience. We've talked about some people who have had major gifts, and I think that's a difficult thing for people today. I think you think a little bit about it before you die, then after you die, you hope your kids will continue to maintain that through trust, through the Fort Wayne Community Foundation, which has been a big help to me, and specifically what they are able to do for the average person, which I don't think a lot of people might not know. But if you've been lucky enough to make a little money in stocks, you can give them appreciated stock, which they can deliver cash to whoever you might want to go to, and they will administer that and to other foundations or to other schools or whatever, your churches, what have you. They're able to distribute that cash instead of you trying to dribble out a share or 2 shares of stock to somebody going on during your lifetime. So I discovered that, and I was on the board of when Paul Clark was here, and he was a very nice gentleman, and he had a good idea, and I'm sorry he's not here to see his dreams, but I'm sure he would be rather impressed when you talk about multi-million dollars when he was thinking about $1 million, or we all were in those days when it was started. So it's been a real growth. Well, as I said, I was part of the Clark thing early on, so I've known it since relative the beginning when Paul worked at North American Van Lines and as a lawyer, and he had some money and he started this, and so that came out of the Clark Foundation. I believe that to be true, and I knew Paul, and he was a very nice gentleman and a lawyer at heart, and so there you go, I guess. Currently, while I'm alive, I'm able to use the Fort Wayne Foundation actively. I can give money, and we have it in an account, and from that they can distribute that to the charities of my choice.